So, important video again this week, right? Bitcoin obviously trading at very key levels, and obviously weekend typically Friday night into Saturday is low volume, low volatility. There's not really much going on, but as soon as we start heading into the weekly close on Sunday, okay, things begin to ramp up again. Volatility, volume, everything begins to enter back into the market. And that's why we typically see a Sunday fun day. Okay. And we've seen this countless Sundays now. I think that once again, weekly close is going to be super important for Bitcoin. It's going to really define where we head possibly next week. Okay, because you have to remember, and this is what we'll cover, we have taken a key high and we're currently trading below that key high, which is the all-time high price. I posted a video 6 days ago, it was about a week ago now, and this is a screenshot from the video. And you will notice, just like I mentioned in that video, we of course tracked the entire move on Bitcoin, tracked it all the way to an all-time high, new all-time high. And we mentioned how this is actually a negative 1.5 standard deviation target, could be another key level, okay? And there was a couple of reasons for that. One, it was resting just above the all-time high, which is here. Two, negative 1.5 standard deviation is usually a good target for a change in state delivery model. All right, that's just a typical target, as well as the negative 2 and negative 2.5 standard deviation targets. And you can see how at each standard deviation target we've actually consolidated. All right, you can see the negative 0.5, obviously aligned with this daily order block that was here, and resistance, of course, okay, and this was, of course, supply. All right, and you can see how it aligned perfectly with that. We consolidated again. We had another daily order block, which was here at negative 1 standard deviations, and again we consolidated around that level before we, of course, had the displacement move, which we've had this week. We had another displacement move, and that displacement move took us to a new all-time high in Bitcoin. All right. But right now, we are trading below the all-time high, which we're going to go into. And we have obviously traded slightly above the negative 1.5 standard deviation target. All right. So we covered all this in the last video, which was about a week ago. We tracked the whole move to put in a new all-time high, to take external range liquidity and buy-side liquidity, and then a potential pullback. This was one scenario. This was one scenario of two scenarios. All right. So if this scenario is going to play out, then I want to look for some key signatures for that scenario right now. Okay. If the other scenario is to play out, which was my more favorable scenario, which is actually to close above the all-time high at weekly close, ideally we should have seen daily closes above, and then we continue higher, right? But we're going to jump into the chart right now, okay? So you can see that what we've actually got at the moment, again, of course, by program, track this entire move higher. We have now taken the all-time high, okay? This is, of course, the all-time high, the old all-time high. So you have to think that these are old highs, okay? Old highs, right? We've taken an old high, okay, which is, of course, back in January now. We took the January high, which is also the yearly high, and we have taken external range liquidity, right? We call this external range liquidity because there's no historical price action beyond this point. All right. So as you can see, daily time frame, we've taken this high, we've traded slightly above 1.5 standard deviation target. At the moment, this is looking like we've manipulated the high, and we're getting a few daily candle closures, of course, below. Okay, so ultimately, it's where we close the daily today, it's where we close the weekly today, because if we still take a look at this at the moment, we do actually have just another fair value gap, which is here. Okay, so this is, of course, a bullish fair value gap. We could just be rebalancing into this bullish fair value gap before continuing higher. That's always a possibility, but it's not that simple. Okay, and if we take a look at this high over here, right? If we take a look at this high, right, and then we take a look at, of course, this high, you can see why this was a sell program, right? And it was a very clear sell program because we manipulated this high, okay? We manipulated this high, and we then closed below this old high, right? So this is, of course, a signature. And as I mentioned, wicks do the damage, candle bodies tell the story. So this was, of course, our point of reversal. And we see a very similar scenario on the weekly time frame too. Okay, and the weekly time frame is exactly the same, right? For us entering actually a sell program, we can get rid of a lot of these little drawings for now. And you can see from the weekly that, the highs and lows remain the same. And it's just like over here. We, of course, had this low, and we manipulated this low, which was an old low, for the third drive lower, which, of course, was here. And then candle body closures were above this old low, right? So this indicated a buy program and a reversal point. And it's the same scenario which happened over here. We had an old high, we manipulated the old high, a drive higher manipulated, and then look where the candle body closures were. Okay, way below this old high. All right, and then this indicated the reversal of the sell program. So we are now potentially looking for a weekly close, and it might still not happen, but we're potentially looking for a weekly close, and that weekly close is actually going to confirm manipulation of the highs, okay, of the all-time high, around negative 1.5 standard deviation target, which is, of course, a target of ours. Okay, we manipulate the high, we get close the candle bodies below, and then that indicates a sell program. And then our sell program would actually be the manipulation of the high, okay, which will be here, right? So this is, of course, what we're looking at the moment, heading into weekly close. Now, one thing, if we close this current or close candle, potentially looking for an up close candle, if we see a down close candle, okay, which is obviously a bearish candle, then that is further indication that this is the reversal. Okay, this is the reversal and then the pullback. And then if we do begin to pull back, you, of course, then just go to target. You look to target some areas of interest. Okay, so yes, this would be an area of interest. This would be a bullish fair value gap, of course. Now, is that a strong weekly bullish fair value gap? Not necessarily. I'd like to see a pullback even further, right? Always closest to a swing point. And as we mentioned, fair value gaps are always stronger. Fair value gaps, PD arrays, are strongest on higher time frames. Okay, so what we'd actually be looking for is a potential pullback if this is confirmation of a sell program. We'd look for a pullback actually deeper. okay, we'd look for a pullback, and as we said, we track the move into the sell program, right? Just like we shown in the picture earlier. We'd look at this as a key level of interest, of course. Doesn't mean that we're just going to bounce here and then continue higher, okay? The chances are we actually pull back deeper into this weekly fair value gap, which is just here, okay? This weekly fair value gap. And you can also see how it's confluence with the change in state delivery target. Well, the change in state delivery model, okay? And as we've mentioned, this is a weekly order block, which is here. So there's a lot of confluence from a PD array perspective to potentially get a larger pullback into this area before potentially continuing higher. But this is our levels of interest for downside, okay? Yes, this is a level of interest too, but this is the strongest level of interest. The weekly bullish fair value gap, which is here, and the weekly order block, which is here. All right. So this, of course, is scenario 2, which was my least favorable scenario. This is the scenario I didn't really want to see. I wanted to see candle body closures above the all-time high price for continuation. This is now indicating a potential reversal. Okay, and as I've mentioned here, manipulate the highs, candle body closures below, enter a sell program. Right. So now we're looking for a weekly close below the all-time high. Okay. So being this old all-time high. And if we get a close below this old high too, okay, then that likely strengthens the confirmation for a sell program. These are the 2 old highs that we're actually looking at. Okay, so I want to see a candle body closure above for confirmation of continuation, close below the 2 old highs here, then that's indication of a reversal into some key levels. We can even draw out some, let's see where, if we draw out some fib targets, and interestingly enough, we would actually be creating a new dealing range. So let's get rid of a lot of these drawings right now. Right, let's get rid of all these drawings and let's focus on dealing range theory. Okay, so we can get rid of these for now too. So DRT, dealing range theory. Okay, this is of course an ICT concept. The idea with this ICT concept is you form a dealing range, which in reality is just a range, okay? But the range it's a different formation of a range, right? As opposed to pointing out just a high and a low and saying that's our range, a bit like, this could be a high and this could be a low, and that could be the formation of a range, okay? Now, dealing range theory is slightly different because the whole idea is that you form a dealing range, so DRT, by entering these programs, all right? And in reality, these programs, buy program and sell program, it's just market maker buy model, market maker sell model, okay? The market maker models, right? ICT concept. I call them buy programs and sell programs because they make more sense to me, okay? In that, using that terminology, right? And the whole idea of being in a market maker model, so a market maker buy model or a market maker sell model, is you target opposing side liquidity, right? So if this was our buy program and our market maker buy model, then our target was always the sell program beginning, okay? Or in this case, the sell program high, right? Because this is opposing side liquidity. This is where we start the sell program. This is where we start the market maker sell model. So this is the opposing side liquidity that we're actually looking to chase, right? Which we've taken. So when we form a dealing range, we take a low, form a new low. Okay, this has to be our lowest low, and we take a old high and we form a new higher high. Okay, and you can tell in both cases, right? In both cases, what do we do? Okay, in both cases, we actually take liquidity. Yeah, so of course, this high is buy side liquidity. This is the previous all-time high price. This is the previous yearly high. This is external range liquidity, which we've taken. And in this case, this is internal range liquidity. This is sell side liquidity. This is a sell stop hunt. And this is what we've taken. Okay, so you draw your dealing range from the lowest low, okay, to the highest high. And then this is the formation of the dealing range. Now, what we can see right now with this dealing range, with this DRT, is we, in fact, can point out some key levels right now, right? So this is, if this is going to be our new range that we're going to potentially trade into, we already know that there's some key levels, and those key levels are the equilibrium, okay? The equilibrium of the dealing range, and we can actually, okay, that's a little bit better, okay? So there's the equilibrium of the dealing range, which is this, dealing range middle or dealing range mid. We know that at the moment we're trading at a premium because we've taken a new all-time high, previous all-time high, and we're still trading within this level of being at premium, right? We know that this is, of course, our dealing range high. We know this is our dealing range low, and we can see that within extreme discount, okay, so this is extreme discount, which is all this level here. We know with an extreme discount, we actually have our weekly order block, okay? And you can see how this extreme discount level just lines perfectly with some of the candle bodies here, okay? And then you can also see how within discount, okay, so discount is below the equilibrium. So if you think this is extreme discount, then this level is discount. This level is premium. This level is extreme premium. Okay. We have, of course, the weekly fair value gap, bullish fair value gap within discount. Okay. So all this is saying is that this is discount market. We have a weekly inefficiency within the discount market that price is likely to trade into at some point in time. Okay, so this is a key level. Right, so there's confluence. There's confluence from a dealing range theory perspective for us to potentially trade lower and have to pull back in Bitcoin. It all depends on the candle body closures. This weekly candle body closure is obviously going to be super important. If we do get the close actually above the two old highs over here, then it's likely we're going to push this dealing range high a bit further, okay, a bit higher, and it's likely it's going to be towards our standard deviation target. But just notice that when we, of course, enter a lot of upside in the market, you begin to see a lot of these very psyop-like posts from lots of different media branches saying, you know, Bitcoin's going to go to 200k. Standard Chartered think Bitcoin's going to go to 200k sometime this year. So they always ramp up these posts, these extremely bullish posts, when Bitcoin is already trending and moving impulsively. They do the complete opposite when Bitcoin is actually trending lower and entering key levels of interest, just like over here. It was, of course, down here at this level. It was Bitcoin is going to 60Ks next. It's likely going to 50K is going to be the lowest point this year, and so much more. Black Monday, Bitcoin to capitulate. Obviously, the stock market was capitulating. So you have to try and keep in mind that a lot of these posts are very manipulative, and it just coincides with the market, okay, and the sentiment in the markets too. So I think let's see how. Okay, so we're about 20 minutes in. I think this is, of course, what I'm looking at the moment. We've got a dealing range right now, possible dealing range formation. We've targeted some PD arrays which are of interest. We've seen that we've taken key levels of liquidity, being old highs, previous all-time high price. We know that this could potentially be our yearly high, potentially. For now, this could potentially be our yearly low. My thesis, my plan for consolidation over the summer still remains accumulation over the summer. It still remains for upside later this year, so Q4 this year. That still remains as is. There's absolutely no change to that. I don't actually plan on changing that until I see, I could probably change that if I see a weekly close above the all-time high price. If I see a weekly close above the previous all-time high by close tonight, then I would change that thesis and probably push the timeline forward a little bit. Okay. Now, that's not to say that we could next week just pull back and we could just pull back to 100,000. Could be optimal. Could be really optimal. Pull back to 100,000 next week and then continue higher. And this would actually be the pullback to buy. Okay, it doesn't have to come this deep. This deep can wait. Okay, we could trend this to these levels into discount of the dealing range, another time. Okay, we could just actually trend back to 100,000, that being an optimal place to especially buy altcoins, and then we continue to our standard deviation target, which is ultimately our target of this change in state delivery model, okay, and our big reversal model, right? But we have to take this step by step. We have to take this close by close. We have to be very objective to the market. I could believe the standard deviation target is coming some point this year, maybe later this year, but that doesn't mean Bitcoin can't pull back to 100K or to 90,000 or 80s, 84, 85,000 before then continuing higher. Okay, and these are the kind of moves that you really want to catch, right? So these are the large swing moves, and this could ultimately just be of course, a higher low setup. Okay, yeah, this could just be a higher low setup and then continuation higher. So this is, of course, what I'm looking at. I will likely determine my thoughts depending on the weekly close, and I think another indication, in fact, of further confluence of a reversal is if we actually draw out the previous week high and previous week low of the last week's candle. Okay, we can see where we are actually trending at the moment. So, of course, right now, what we've actually got is price is still above the previous week high. So that gives me a little bit of confidence, to say the least. Gives me a little bit of confidence that we're still above previous week high. But we are dangerously close. Dangerously close. Okay, so I would like to see price close above the previous week high. Then that could just mean an indication that next week is going to be of course, important. Next week could just be consolidation for the entire week, because then we'd have be trading between this high and this low. So it could just be consolidation all week before then deciding on a move. Or if we do actually get the close back in the previous week range, so a close below previous week high, then that gives me further confirmation that we are putting in a pullback. Okay, putting in a pullback, and then we're targeting 100,700, which is previous week low. Probably fill this inefficiency, which is here, and then potentially continue higher. Okay, so I want to see a close above previous week high, and ideally I'd like to see a close above the two old highs. Okay, that will give me the strongest confirmation that we're going to continue higher, but I would still like to see a close above previous week high. Right, I think I'm going to end the video there. I hope you enjoyed. Remember to go and check out our Discord, go and check out Twitter, our profiles on X, my personal profile, and Outcome Trading Group's X profile. All the links are below. Okay, and I'll catch you in the next one.